YouTube, welcome. Okay, we've got an extended metaphor. We're halfway through a difficult passage that can only be understood by painting a picture. And we stopped halfway last time. We go sequentially, step by step. So I'm going to step back and let us get the whole picture. Okay, so we're going to recover some of the ground that we've already looked at, but that'll give us the picture. Which means paragraph 2 on page 58, paragraph 2, actually it's the first full paragraph on page 59. Starting out with Jie Pusa Yan in Chinese and Moon Liberation Bodhisattva asked in English. Okay, 58, 59. Okay, here we go. Ready? Join me. I'll give you a line, you give it back. Jie Pusa Yan 佛子，此七地菩萨，为是然横，为是净横。Okay, there we go. Over to the right. Together, read with me. Moon of Liberation, Bodhisattva asked, disciple of the Buddha, are a bodhisattva's practices on the seventh ground defiled or pure? Okay. Ran is a word that means stained. So defiled, how do you think of defiled? Sounds pretty bad. Sounds dirty. And it's not that. It's not that it's dirty, meaning if the bodhisattva gets noticed by the vice squad, they're going to arrest him and put him in jail. It's not that kind of defiled. It's not that he's doing something immoral. It has to do with a standard of what, in terms, I mentioned the other day that with Don Juan, the teachings of the Yaqui Brujo by Carlos Castaneda, we heard about immaculate warriors. It's that kind of purity. Immaculate meaning someone who has not the slightest trace of self. Another good example, I personally don't like to peer through glasses with thumbprints on them, smudgy glasses. I don't like smudgy glasses. And so we discovered microfiber cloths. And I carry a microfiber cloth in my bag, and I, have one in my office upstairs, and I have one in my office at City of 10,000 Buddha. And every chance I get, I'm polishing my glasses. I guess my years of looking through a camera lens, fingerprints on camera lenses are really the bane of a photographer's existence, because no matter how beautiful the image you've got framed, if it's smudgy, that detracts from, you can't see as clearly. Same thing with auto windshields, right? I really like to keep my car windshield clean, same reason. So, that kind of defiled or pure, meaning, is there a smudge in the windshield? Is there a thumbprint on the camera lens? Is there dust on your glasses? That's going to influence how you see the frame that you make of the world. So it's that kind of defile. And the answer is, just jump right in there, Pedro. Don't be shy. There are some empty seats halfway in row number 2. Could we get the usher to escort Pedro to row number 2? Yes, please. Thank you very much. Please turn off your cell phone and do not shine lights on the performers. What do the ushers tell you? I know it's the ushers who shine the lights on you if they see you with your recording device. That's how it goes, right? So that's the idea. The Bodhisattva's practices are unstained by what? Self. That's what he's been working on. That's what she's been working on all this time, to get so that the things the Bodhisattva does are unselfish to the max. extremely unselfish, free of any taint, trace, speck of what? Getting good stuff for himself, herself, out of the unselfish work they do. They are really, really selfless. These people serve. They serve. They live for others because they don't see a difference between self and others. Really don't. That's the stain and defilement here. The language makes us talk about things like purity, dirt, defilement, immorality, things like that. That's not where you won't understand this the way I think it was given if that's how we interpret it. Okay? Now, moving on here. Going down, question was raised. Tell me about those bodhisattva practices. On the seventh ground, is he immaculate yet? Is she spotless? Is she selfless yet? Question. 金刚藏菩萨言：佛子此初地至七地所行诸行，皆舍离烦恼业，以回向无上菩提故，分得平等道故，然未命为超烦恼行。Vaja Treasury Bodhisattva answered, disciples of the Buddha, all bodhisattvas' practices from the first to the seventh ground are cultivated by letting go actions that lead to afflictions. They make transference to unsurpassed bodhi, and they realize the impartial way according to the appropriate portion. At this point, however, these cannot yet be called practices that transcend afflictions. All right. That's what we talked about last week. Now, this is not simple stuff, so I'm going to ask everybody please to keep clear off the table in your mind. All right? Grab one of those. Just Marco, grab one of those. Yeah, there you go. Oh, you got a songbook there. You need a sutra. There you go. That's the one you want. 58. So, as I say, clear off the table in the mind, make some space, because we've got to hold a couple, 2 or 3 ideas in relationship before we get what's being talked about. When we first started explaining the 7th ground, this is the 7th ground out of 10 grounds, the 7th stage out of 10 stages, and it's a crossroads. At this point, the Bodhisattva has choices. He is like a student working through grade school. He's like a student working through high school, like a student working through college, like a student going through degree programs, certification programs, training programs. The Bodhisattva is on his way to Buddhahood, on her way to Buddhahood, but there's a lot of steps in between. Said to be 53 steps, all the way up to Miao Jue, right, to wonderful enlightenment, which is Buddhahood. So we've gone through the 10 stages of faith, the 10 stages of dwelling, abiding, the 10 stages of practice, the 10 stages of transference, and now we're on the 10 grounds, the 10 stages, the 10 bhumis, they're called in Sanskrit, a bhumi, B-H-U-M-I. And so already we know there's 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. This is like, there's only, from ground number 1, there's only 12 stages remaining before the end of the path. This bodhisattva is advanced, good meditator, skillful, unselfish person. But there's still territory to cover before the bodhisattva gets to where he's going. Within the 10 grounds, this chapter, you could say this is a separate unit. Our questioner is a bodhisattva named Moon of Liberation. He says, okay, from ground 1, which is what? Of the 53, it's 10, 10, 10, 10. It's 40, 53 total. This is from 40 to 50, he's saying. From stage 40 to stage 50, tell me about that. Are those bodhisattvas' practices pure or defiled? This is a turning point. Depending on what the bodhisattva says, he or she will become a Buddha or won't. So you can go You can go take the bypass and not get there. We're going to find out about that a little later, but that's what's at stake here. How do you measure where the person is? It's by something called practices involving effort and effortless practice. Now the question is, we don't know what effortless practice is. Wu Gong Yong Ha. That's a hard one to describe. And what the Bodhisattva is doing here is he's trying to say what that is. Trying to tell us what effortless practice is. Because why? This entails a big change in your mental landscape. I think probably your, what do they call it? Your neural pathways, the entire orientation of what you know changes at this crossroads. And so Muna Liberation says, tell me more about this, because I was like, what is it? What's it like? Tell me can you describe it? And because it's a stage that's already gone beyond language, you can't really use grammar and logic and syntax to explain it. You have to point to something, make a picture, and then you understand it. All right? That's where we are. Vajra Treasury Bodhisattva answers that question saying, okay, every Bodhisattva practice from stage 40 up to 47 are cultivated by doing something significant to our understanding of what we're doing as Buddhist practitioners. What do? We let go affliction. Okay, we spent time on this last week. Here's the theory again, just because it's worth saying again. From this model, we're already awake. Nobody lacks the Buddha nature, which is your share of enlightenment. Problem is, we cover it over, so we don't know it. We don't know we're awake. Like, we have a fantastic limousine, sports cars, SUV, super van vehicle. It's just the most wonderful vehicle, handmade, right? Priceless car. Problem is, the windshield is smeared over with layers of Vaseline. You can't see through it. You feel like you're in a little closet because you can't see out the windows. The windows are covered. The car could carry you anywhere in style, but you don't dare turn it on or drive it because you can't see out of it. So it's as if you didn't have it, but it's there all along. That's the theory of our situation right now. We're awake, but we're covered over. So cultivation, Buddhist practice from this model is removing the covers. What do you do when you meditate? You get rid of confusion. What do you do when you recite the Buddha's name? Is you focus your mind on a sound. Use sound to focus. Same with mantras. What do you do when you give? Bodhisattva's practice. You're reducing that big me in the middle. You're reducing your selfishness. You're pulling out the fire under the cooking pot that keeps that stew hot, right? You don't try to blow the stew cold. You remove the wood underneath so the whole pot gets cold. That's give the self away. Lots of ways to clean off the windshield. I'm mixing my metaphors wildly, aren't I? Cooking pots and car windshields and camera lenses. But the point is, our model is you subtract what's covering over. That's called let go actions that lead to afflictions. Okay? That's the theory. Now, what does it mean? It means not getting angry is real cultivation. Getting angry puts another layer of Vaseline over that window, over your camera lens, puts a big thumbprint on your glasses, right? Being greedy, taking more, your share and more, rubs your thumbs around your glasses, right? So those are afflictions. What are afflictions? Greed, anger, delusion, pride, doubt, jealousy, low self-esteem. Those are all adding trouble, smearing the lens. The Bodhisattva from first ground to 10th to 7th ground, everything he does, everything she does, is designed to pull those covers off. Why go all through all this to explain it? Because this is a very different model from the idea that you get anything. Right? It's not that, oh, if you cultivate our way, you will get enlightened. You will have psychic powers. Oh, you will be able to read people's thoughts. You'll know your past lives. That may happen in the process, but that's not the motive for practice. If you do it that way, what are you doing? Adding more Vaseline to the windshield. Grasping. I want to get enlightened. Right? Wrong direction. It's like, no, you are enlightened, but you don't see it until you come back to that place of what? True, simple, plain ground of the mind. Become a nice person, kind-hearted person, caring, generous, someone who listens, someone who extends their hand to help. You're removing the self. You're letting go of actions that lead to affliction. Funny, it's the reason why we go through this dance is it's counterintuitive. People come and say, wow, you Buddhists, if I come and practice with you, what do I get? The answer is precisely nothing. It's what you get rid of. Oh, great, I'll come. That sounds terrific. That really sounds like fun. It's like, no, it doesn't. Sounds like nothing. But it's true. So around our teacher, who had this in his bones, this method, he would, when you're around Master Hua, he wouldn't hold himself up as, quote, enlightened. He never asked you if you were enlightened yet. What did he say? He'd say, how's your stinky temper? And then he would try to set you off. He would find your buttons and push them. He wouldn't ask, he'd just check by blaming you for something you hadn't done. How about that? And then it's like, suddenly you realize pressure's gone and he's kind of walking away going, no, next time we'll try again later, You didn't pass your test. He could get you angry. Your afflictions are still there. That was how he judged your progress. And if he would insult you, talk about your mom, yo mama, Master Hua didn't exactly just talk about yo mama, but he would, your accomplishments, things that you thought you were good at, he would, and then he would watch. And if you can go, yeah, I just really want to understand what's going on, Shifu. I just really want to figure out my mind. He would go, pass. Because you're moving closer to no affliction, moving closer to this model. He really would test you on whether your greed, anger, and delusion were still strong. Not what kind of superhero muscles you developed. Not that. Okay, got it? Okay. They make transference to unsurpassed bodhi. These bodhisattvas from ground 1 to ground 7 use their mind to practice giving. We talked about this at length. You transfer to future awakening. And this is a complex idea. We're still making space on our desk, right? The Bodhi resolve, we talked about that. It's this notion that you recognize your potential. My potential is to have deep wisdom. Seeing my nature uncovered. And the way I get there is I, quote, Hua Zhong Sheng, take beings across. What is that? My anger, my greed, my selfishness, my projections onto other people, my fears, all of my anxieties. People are aware of election anxiety. That's a new thing. We're reading all these stories about nationally America's going through a trauma right now, fearing the results of election day. So, it's real. We look at that and go, that's an affliction. Yeah, that's a living being in there, projecting, how terrible it would be if, ... So, those are living beings, and you hua them to clear them off. Your nature, your Buddha nature that shines. So, same theory, but you actually transfer to Bodhi, to the future, when you reach that state of nothing covering, no coverings. And they realize the impartial way according to the appropriate portion. Okay, sounds really technical, doesn't it? They realize the Tao according to the work they've done. Slower, faster, more often, less often. Sometimes you feel like you really see it. Sometimes you get up in the morning or it's late at night. Sometimes you're sitting. Sometimes you're just like drying your teacup. You got the towel in your hand and you're wiping the teacup and you realize that you've just made a connection. You know, this appropriate portion happens at odd times. For me, one of the best times to think about what I'm going to say when I lecture is when I'm shaving my head. I don't know why. Maybe it's just something about, you know, paying attention to my head or something. But I make connections when I shave my head. Maybe I'm taking the weight off and I can see more clearly. Subtractive practices that let go of afflictions that lead to heavy head or something like that. I don't know. It's true. Maybe it's the hot water or the smell of the soap. Something. It's the razor. It's the razor shaving through afflictions, right? 贪掉宾虚当愿众生，妖尽恶根，光慧菩提, something like that. So you recite a verse. I obviously don't have it down yet. But it's that mindfulness that somehow makes a connection. At this point, these cannot yet be called practices that transcend afflictions. The Bodhisattva is not a Buddha yet. Okay, so you're going along, oh great, wow, they've letting go actions, they're in the right direction, they've got their compass, right? And they transfer to Bodhi, they realize the way according to how much they've accomplished, but they're still at the crossroads. They still have not taken that next step. They haven't determined their future path yet, which we'll find out. Okay, so, oops, there's a big condition in that one. Okay, ready? Here comes the picture. Vajra Treasury Bodhisattva is going to give him a what's it like. Here, right? Here comes the image. Ready? I'm now on 1, 2, 3, 4, paragraph 4. 佛子, disciples of the Buddha down there. 佛子譬如转轮圣王，承天相貌，有视天下，只有贫穷困苦之人，而不为彼中患所然，然为名为超过人位。Disciples of the Buddha, it is like a wheel-turning sage king, who, riding the treasured Deva's elephant, travels throughout the 4 continents. He knows there are people who are poor and miserable, yet he is not stained by their many misfortunes. He cannot, however, be known as one who transcends human status. Okay. This is, we're going to go through that paragraph, and we're going to do 4 more paragraphs before we stop tonight so we can get the whole picture, because this is, as I was looking at this, it's a constructed image that's got 4 legs, and to get it all we have to place them out there and then see the balance so that we understand what he's trying to express through this picture. What he's talking about is where the Bodhisattva is in his progress. Switch the pronoun, her progress, up to you. Bodhisattva at the 7th stage is about the bigger issue is what are effortful practices and effortless practices. That's what's being described. Because once you get through the crossroads, you've reached a place called no further retreat. Sometimes called irreversibility. A car that doesn't have a reverse gear, right? It's only got 1, 2, and 3. You can't back up in this car. It's a state called Avatamsaka in Sanskrit, Butoidran. From that point on, the bodhisattva never falls back, lifetime after lifetime, only goes forward to Buddhahood. And that's a big difference, because prior to this, it's 3 steps forward, 1 step back, 3 steps forward, 1 step back. Over lifetimes. So I understand. All right, here's the picture. Disciples of the Buddha. What is a wheel-turning sage king? Doesn't that sound great? Wheel-turning sage king. That's one of our better translations. These are called chakravartins, Sanskrit. Chakra is like a chakra, wheels, right? Talk about energy bodies and chakras. Vartin is one who turns. Shengwang is a, what, Arya Raja? Is that what it is? You want to check that out? Chakravartin. Is there a, is it what? It's not, what's the sage? Shengwang. Arya, right? You got it? Okay, yeah, might not, no, I might be making that up. So, in Chakravartin. In Chinese, it's Zhuan Luan Sheng Wang. Okay, here's the notion. You have to look into Buddhist cosmology, which is to say, from the Buddha's eyes, as he woke up, he said, here's the world. I'm going to describe the world to you now. There's our world, Mount Sumeru, polar mountain in the center, and then 4 continents. We're in the southern continent, called Jambudvipa. There's oceans of fragrant water, perfumed water, and then around them is called the Iron Ring Mountains, the mountains that hold this world up. You go down below, and there are wheels of air holding it up, and then wheels of water. So, Tom, if you study your geophysics, it's a very fascinating model, you know. And there are earthquakes where this, you know, can happen. But usually, when the Buddha wakes up, there's an earthquake. So, I don't know if that counts on the Richter scale. But so this is the Buddha's cosmology, and it doesn't stop with the human realm. It says there's 6 realms. There's the hell realm. There's the realm of ghosts. There's the realm of animals. There's the realm of humans. There's the realm of devas, or gods. And there's the realm of asuras, or titans. Now, where the titans fit in, it's not vertical. They intersperse throughout the others. But right above the human realm is the realm of devas. Tian, right? There's one pictured right there, and there's one pictured right there. 2 devas flying around. These are people like you, like me, who have the blessings that carry them above human rebirth. It's a fluid structure, a fluid model. Devas can fall and come back down to human realm or lower, and humans can ascend and go up to the Deva realm or lower. They can go up to the Deva realm or somewhere in that hierarchy. And the Deva's realm divides into 6, 28, and 4. So there's the desire realm, the form realm, and the formless realm in the heavens. And here in this brief passage, we've got 2 of those separate realms where gods are reborn. Now, are devas gods? And what does this have to say about folks who follow a monotheistic structure, a monotheistic construction of the heavens? Well, you have to say what? There's more to learn. set that one aside for the moment and say, well, there's other stories. Monotheism is a popular story, not just for Protestant Christians and Roman Catholics, but for Jews, right? Hebrew scriptures, the Torah, is based on the notion of only one. Boy, if you say there's two, you're in big trouble. The Hebrew scriptures will tell you about the trouble that comes to those who believe otherwise, right? But that is a localized popular story. Go to Asia, go to the world of indigenous paths, go to the pagan world, which is a profoundly time-tried and cogent, consistent structure of connection with with nature and humanity, and you have a different number of gods. You got polytheism. You have non-theism. Many gods and no creator God. Okay, get the idea. In this notion, there are many levels of gods. All right? The first one above humans is called Si Tian Wang Tian in Chinese, the Deva realm of the four world-protecting kings. Said these gods have close connection with humans. They have names. They have directions. They have things they rule. They have a body of demons and ghosts that they subdue, and spiritual baddies that they subdue. They're very much part of a history of human interaction as long as human history. As long as people have been paying attention to what's going on in the world and nature, there has been contact with the Devas. Sometimes it's more overt, sometimes it's less overt, but that's who we're talking about. You go above them, and there's another level of gods. You go above the second level, there's a third level, and a fourth, and a fifth, and a sixth. So the realm that is called the Rupa Loka, the Kama Loka, is our realm. It includes human realm and below. The realm above us, the Deva's realm, includes 3 levels of gods. Okay? So a lot of stuff to keep in mind here, right? In general, these are Devas that respond to humans. And in the Chinese, now, how much of this is Indian-based Buddhism from the Pali tradition? How much of it is Chinese culture from the Chinese language, and therefore rooted in Chinese culture and somewhat separate from Indian culture? They overlap. If you had to squeeze it out like a washcloth and say, we're squeezing out all the Chinese elements, you would still have a wet washcloth. That's a terrible image. That didn't work. Let me try it again. Isolate all of the Chinese elements and separate them out from what was originally Indian Buddhism, comma, let me see, where do I go from here? You'd have tea that didn't taste very good. How about that? You'd have bland tea, right? If you want a tasty cup of Dharma, where are we going with this? If you'd have to keep all of the stuff in there. And Master Hua took it all back. He titrated out, there we go, now we're going. He titrated the solution out and then reduced it to crystals so he could carry it over, put it in American hot water, and see what kind of tea it makes. There we go. Y'all following that? If I was Doug Powers, I'd say, y'all understand that much? And you go, what is he talking about? Okay. How much of this is clear seeing? How much of it is based on a Chinese vision of the heavens and the way the universe is built? If you want to answer that question, look at the Avatamsaka Sutra, because here is an enlightened human being who was raised in a Hindu Brahmanist context, but saw past it. Here is a sage who said, actually, Brahmaha, who is the he's not the monotheistic, he's the polytheistic godhead of the Indian structures that produced Prince Siddhartha and his family. The Buddha said he is only one of those devas in that hierarchy. He too, Brahma himself, whom the religious peers that I grew up with worship, himself has to cultivate if he's going to get out of the Deva's realm. Serious critique of that form of Deva, of God, of Theos, right? So, the Avatamsaka was spoken by that person. And what does he say? He says, it all comes from the mind. All Devas, all hell beings, all Buddhas, all living beings come from the same place. Right here. Meanwhile, he would talk about the realms of these gods just the way he would talk about politicians. He would say the responsibility of the chief of police is to keep the order. The responsibilities of the postmaster is to deliver the mail. Responsibilities of the president is to convene the government, to listen to all sides, to represent the best parts of the nation, and to lead and to serve, right? So even though the Buddha would say these devas are on their way to Buddhahood, still, in their role, they have work to do. How does he describe them? He says, it is like a wheel-turning sage king, a Chakravartin, who is a deva on that four world-protecting king's level, who rides on an elephant. Indian context, right? Right? And who travels throughout the four continents. So he's giving us a picture of devas who travel to inspect. Those kings in the heavens go around checking out what the humans are doing and how the devas are doing and how the demons are doing and the baddies, because their job is to protect. All right? He knows there are people who are poor and miserable, but he is not stained by their many misfortunes. He is not obstructed by, he is not attached to their many misfortunes. Why? Compassion. Right? Why would a god be stained by people's misfortunes? Because people suffering hurts. It hurts to witness people suffering. The gods see all of it. Still keep going to serve and protect. Okay, interesting. That's what I make of this after thought. What does it mean to not be stained by? To not be, it's the same word, ran, that we had above. Our practice is stained or unstained. He's giving us a picture of what it's like. Okay, for Vajra Treasury Bodhisattva to answer the question by giving us a picture of a god riding on an elephant, I mean, is this a video game? What's going on here? That had to have been understandable by the folks who heard it. So my guess is that in Indian mythology, which is to say their fundamental stories, this was an image they could recognize. Devas, Chakravartins, ride on elephants and travel around doing what gods do. Okay? That must have made sense to them. What would we do now? We'd probably say something like Iron Man in his jet-powered suit flies around defeating the baddies, or Spider-Man flips through the canyons of New York City shooting webs out of his palm and swinging from building to building, or Superman. We have those contemporary heroic images of somebody who's in charge, somebody who knows better than we do what's going on and can do something about it, right? Luke Cage is in Harlem cleaning up the baddies, right? So, okay, that must have clicked with people. Now we think about gods on elephants, and we go, that's quaint, okay. So when we look at our window here in the Berkeley Monastery, we realize these are embedded in a story. There's a story here. And it's not an Indian story. The Avatamsaka Sutra is not an Indian book, but it was spoken from the Buddha's cultural network, from the Buddha's cultural context, which included elephants. Now, in New Delhi, walking down the street, downtown, of course, Delhi is huge, so there's lots of downtowns, lots of neighborhoods. Coming around the corner to where a building is being constructed and seeing in front of you this huge elephant towering over the taxi cabs and the double-decker buses. And he's been painted. The elephant has numbers on him and red paint, and he's painted and decorated. What is he doing? He is using his massive strength, picking up bamboo that's being put into a scaffolding so that the workers can go up and put on the third floor. Right? It's a work elephant. Right in downtown New Delhi. Today. They're there. Elephants are used by construction companies in India because they're number one, really strong. Number two, their whole lives devoted to usually one trainer, one person who that elephant relates to completely, totally, bonds with that person. Three, they can be tamed. They do exactly what you want. You say, stand right here. The elephant stands right there. You say, back up. He backs up, picks up more bamboo, construction bamboo, hands it up. And they run on peanuts. What's that? They're vegans. Elephants are vegans. And they're relatively pollution-free, as long as you're there with your super-duper pooper scooper. There's not so much, there's some methane coming out of that tailpipe, but not as bad as one might think, less carbon monoxide. So, construction elephants in Delhi in 2016, it's like you rub your eyes and you think, am I seeing this? Honk, honk, buses going by, and here's the elephant munching, flapping the flies with his tail and his ears, and it's like, okay. So it's not uncommon to imagine that when people see this, think, yeah, the devas. Now, what about this flying elephant? I've heard of pink elephants, but that was after a lot of champagne, What flying elephants? What's this about? Okay, flying elephants. Well, there is traditionally a story that Chakra, who is the deva from the next heaven up, called the heaven of the 33 gods, Sanshasantien Triyastrimsha heaven, second level of heavens in the desire realm. He has a unique conveyance, which is an elephant that he rides on. Not an SUV, not a minivan, not a limousine, right? Not a skateboard, but he rides an elephant. And the elephant arrives to take him wherever he wants, and it's understood that that is one of the jewels, one of the treasures of a anointed crown, a deva who has been anointed on the crown of his head and become a chakravartin. There are said to be 4 kinds of wheel-turning sage kings: gold, silver, bronze or copper, and iron. And they have, they're in relative, they're ranked, and when that happens to them, and there's a part of this sutra, it's fascinating, there's a part of this sutra that describes the ceremony, where they get oil put on the crown of their head, and as they are when they officially become inaugurated as a Chakravartin at these various levels, spontaneously they get these jewels, these treasures that come to them. One of them is the elephant. One is soldiers. One is a horse, fabulous horse, celestial horse, right? One is a wheel. They get another vehicle. It's like a unicycle, apparently. So this is, legend. Yeah, it's an ancient story. Far be it from me to say, oh, ha ha, phony, not true. We long for stories. Stories feed our deepest need to belong, for knowledge. This is one of the oldest stories on the planet, and I'm over in St. Mary's Cathedral, San Francisco, watching Bishop John Wester get inaugurated, consecrated as the auxiliary bishop of San Francisco. And guess what? Here is the archbishop and a cardinal who's come in from LA to pour oil on the crown of his head. Part of the inauguration of a Catholic bishop and archbishop is to have oil dripped on the crown of your head. Guanding, right? Same. This is part of our species. Something that has been almost lost in the mists of time, but not. Here's our text talking about these beings. Chakravartins, wheel-turning sage kings, at the time when they get officially tapped, and there's an investiture, right? A consecration, a initiation ceremony. Sure enough, these things spontaneously happen. There's something actually takes place at that level. Interesting. And yet these are the first level of devas, of which there's many, many more. Okay. The treasured devas, elephant. This is one of the Si Bao, right, Zhuanlun Shengwang. And there's also Qi Bao. He knows there are people who are poor and miserable, and he can still go on. He doesn't forget them, but he doesn't get knocked off his equilibrium because of that. He cannot, however, be known as one who transcends human status, yet he's still as much in the human realm as he is out of it. He's not there yet. Still has a ways to go. He's just barely above the human realm. Okay, forwards, going so far so good. More approachable here. Okay, here we go. 若舍往生生于方世，承天宫殿，见前世界，游千世界，视现梵天光明，威德，而乃名位超过人位。Suppose, okay, here we go, ready? Suppose in a future life he were to leave the role of king and be reborn in the Brahma worlds, and there travel in a deva's palace, he would see thousand-fold world systems and travel through those world systems. He would display a Brahma god's awesome splendor and would be known as having transcended human status. All right. What has happened? He's put him through the crossroads in the analogy. Okay? So that's why we're reading this whole thing, so we can keep track of he's building this structure here. He said, suppose we've got a wheel-turning sage king who travels around the worlds on his elephant, looking at people suffering and feeling it, and still able to go on, despite the misery that he's seeing. He's not Guanyin Bodhisattva yet, right? Still touched by it. That's very good, but he is as much a human as he is a deva. Now, that Deva, same one, progresses, continues, and suppose, he said, writing the story, suppose he left the role of Chakravartin and ascended and went up to the form realm, the Brahma worlds, the Rupa Loka, it's called, the form realm. Things change, and look what he does. There he travels in a Deva's palace. He sees way more than he saw before because it's higher. He can see 1,000-fold world systems. Qian Shijie. This is more Buddhist cosmology. He sees galaxies, for example, right? And he travels through those world systems. He can go way, 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 way further. He would display a Brahma god's awesome splendor, and at that point is no longer connected to the human realm. Okay? So he's given us this suppose. This is a hypothetical situation. So we're supposed to hold this in mind. It's a moving picture. We've got a Chakravartin king who becomes a Brahma heaven king. That image he's going to pair with another image. So we got to keep that in mind. All right. What about the Brahma realm? Oh boy, this is the 28 I mentioned. The gods have all these different levels. And in the Brahma realm, in the realm of the Brahma gods, there are 28 different kinds, 28 levels. And one of the hallmarks of this level is that the gods are in samadhi. This is where the dhyanas arrive. People who meditate in other traditions, who know about, in Pali tradition, they're called the jhanas, right? And there are some teachers who will teach you about the first, second, third, and fourth dhyana. Master Hua was one of those teachers. He would tell us about the dhyanas, how to enter them, what happens when you meditate to that level of purity and concentration. So, gods in the Brahma realm, in this realm of the Brahma gods, are in the dhyanas all the time. And their bodies are different. Their lifespans are different. They're completely beyond desire at this point. One of the most interesting things about devas at this point is what? They're no longer in the desire realm. Mara, the demon king, can't touch them. Mara, this is another whole part. We could spend weeks and weeks on the realm of gods, and we'd never exhaust it. And a lot of the information comes right from the sutra. Mara lives at the top of the desire realm. The demon king is up there, not in the hells. Just like Hebrew scriptures, where Satan lives up in the heavens. How about that? Right? Satan in the book of Job, in the Hebrew scriptures, conversation with God, because he's in the heavens. He falls, right? But he's up in the heavens. Interesting how these mythologies look at each other, talk to each other. So, sure enough, once you get past the sixth heaven, of which the wheel-turning sage kings are one, then you get up to 6, and you find Mara's heaven. If your meditation and your precept purity, mostly if your self has been, you remove lots of covers, you can meditate right through past the demon's ability to entice you by smell or flavor or thoughts, and you're reborn as a Brahma god. So, he says, okay, that's where our bodhisattva is, right? Okay, he's left the role of the Chakravartin, he's reborn in the Brahma realm, he travels in a Deva's palace. Devas there, they don't ride on elephants anymore, they ride in palaces. And the sutra gives us this picture of these, Winnebago, Deva Winnebagos flying around. They show up and the door opens and here's the bodhisattva, or the Deva sitting in full lotus in samadhi. Very cool. Think about the parking problems. How would you do, you drive into the parking garage and those green lights that show you there's one available and you got to back your Deva palace in there. Yeah. So he would see thousandfold world systems and travel through them to teach living beings and shine with the light of a Brahma God. Then you are said to actually be beyond human, what, feeling? No, you're beyond emotion. Your wisdom outstrips your emotion. In the earlier Deva realms, you were probably 55, 45, Deva to human. Here you've gone beyond humanity. Okay? Now, flip over, page 60, 61. You got to get the next chunk. And we're getting there. This is a big picture. This is a bodhisattva's analogy, right? Very elegant. Okay, I'm going to read the Chinese, and then we can read the English together. Here we go. 佛子菩萨亦复如是，始从初地至于七地，成波罗蜜称，游行世间，知诸世间烦恼过患，以成正道故，不为烦恼过失所然，然为命为朝烦恼横。Okay, we ready? Over on page 61, let's read it together. Disciples of the Buddha, the Bodhisattva is the same way. Starting from the first ground and reaching to the seventh ground, he rides the vehicle of the paramitas, traveling through the many worlds. He knows the troubles and afflictions in the mundane world, but because of travels the right roads, he is not defiled by those troubles and afflictions. He has not, however, transcended afflicted practices. Okay, there's a typo there because he travels the right roads. All right, so how do we understand this? Disciples of the Buddha, the Bodhisattva is just like the Chakravartin who becomes the Brahma God. He starts on the first ground, and now he's come to the seventh ground, this crossroads space. And he's riding on the vehicle of the paramitas. There's the analogy, as if the paramitas were a car. And he travels through the many worlds using, giving precepts, patience, vigor, samadhi, and wisdom to teach living beings. He knows the troubles and afflictions that people experience in the mundane world, but he himself is got the compass point correct. He's on the right road. He knows where he's going. So those troubles and afflictions don't stain him. They don't stop him. They don't trouble him. He doesn't attach to them. But he himself still has a road to go. Okay? Got that image? The other side of the analogy, what it's like, right? So this made sense to me as I was reading it. If you think about it like a jigsaw puzzle, you just put the pieces in. Oh, I see how that fits. What's it like? The Bodhisattva, as he was coming up through the other grounds, step by step by step, got to ground number 5, and if you recall, that's where the Bodhisattva kind of re-entered the world. He learned every worldly practice that people do. He learned how to talk. He learned how to be a jeweler. He learned how to be a cook, how to be a doctor, how to be an astrologer. He learned how to dance, how to sing, how to play musical instruments. All these things that people do because why? At the 5th ground, his samadhi was strong enough that he could do that without wavering. Number 5 is what? Dhyana paramita, right? The 5th stage, the 5th ground is, the 5th paramita is meditation. And if you don't move, when your senses encounter all these things, you pass. He learned to use all that stuff to teach at that 5th ground. Then what happened at ground number 6? We got to the 6th ground. Emptiness happened. Remember the 12 links? You empty all that stuff out. You empty the self out. And you learn to teach upaya style, expediently. You learn to teach according to people's ability to learn. So that's the context for 7. Okay? That's what it means when it says he hasn't transcended afflicted practices. He's not completely able to use those skillfully. Pretty much, but not entirely. Okay? Still has a ways to go. Here's where he can, if he gets across, if he makes the right choice, he becomes irreversible. No further retreat. Okay? That was the, when that picture, when that piece hit the puzzle, I could suddenly see the bigger picture. It's that before, like up to 4, the 4th ground, he didn't have enough samadhi, wouldn't dare do all those things because he would melt. Ni pusa guo hai zi shen nan bao. Great image, Mahayana. When the clay bodhisattva tries to cross the ocean, it's hard to keep his act together, right? He gets in the water and he becomes mud, right? So, ni pusa guo hai zi shen nan bao. When the earth bodhisattva crosses the ocean, it's hard to stay together. So that's up to 4. At 5, suddenly the ni pusa is, he's waterproof. He gets waterproofed. He can cross the ocean and arrive near the shore just fine. Then he empties that out, and he empties out the self-inductor empty, and he can use all those worldly skills to teach. Okay, got that? We're getting there. One more piece, and we're done with the image. Let's push on here. 60, paragraph that says 若舍一切有功用. Ready? Here we go. 若舍一切有功用行，从第7地入第8地，成菩萨清净成圣，游行世间，知烦恼过失，不为所然，而乃名为超烦恼横，以得一切尽超过故。If he can let go of all practices that involve the application of effort, then from the 7th ground he enters the 8th ground, traveling on the purified bodhisattva vehicle. He moves through the mundane world, knowing its troubles and afflictions, yet remaining undefiled by them. Then he is said to have transcended afflicted practice, because all afflictions have been transcended. All right. There's the 4th piece. He brings the bodhisattva in tension with the Chakravartin who became the Brahma king. To get the analogy to work, we understand that piece, that picture. Let's apply that vision to the bodhisattva, and we'll have a clue about what effortless practice. Ha. Now we see the working of the metaphor. What is it? Suppose the bodhisattva is out there using his skill and means and his samadhi to teach living beings, and he completely goes on, what's the word, faith? Do you go on faith? How do you let go of practices that involve application of effort? One is, you've done them so much they're grooved. They're grooved in. You've recited the Buddha's name so many times that all you have to do now is kind of find that space. And you've recited that mantra long enough, all you have to do is wait, right? You don't even have to go hui guang fan, you just go wait, and it's mantra's moving. Mantra's revolving, turning like a wheel, right? Because you've done it so much. Analogy, what would it be like for us? Driving. When you get behind the wheel, do you have to go through your checklist? Let's see. Put foot on brake to disengage accelerator. Insert key in ignition. Check. Make sure drive shift, No. You back out and enter traffic. When you merge onto a freeway at 60 miles an hour, that's a lot of subtle decisions have to be made every time you merge into traffic. There's lots of choices there. And You're completely, checking your mirrors, looking. If you decide, prevailing speed on the Nimitz is 65. Okay, I'm going to enter the freeway at 65 because I'm law-abiding. Meanwhile, traffic is stopped in all lanes, and you come roaring in at 65, and you were correct, except you were totally wrong. So you make a lot of decisions to merge onto a freeway. How many of those are conscious decisions? Most of them are like automatic, right? After you've driven for a while. Practices that involve effort. That's a really good analogy. Okay, when you boot up your computer, we get so used to being able to open a browser and check email, if it's browser-based email. You ever try to teach that skill to somebody who's never used a computer before? It's like, here's the mouse. What's a mouse? You put your cursor on what's a cursor? Now, click that. You click it and they hold it. No, double click it. What do you mean double, much less. Okay, let's skillfully, it's like somebody who is a computer phobe, that is daunting. That's a difficult set of knowledge to employ to get to your email. Many, many steps. We forget it. Forget about it. How it's like, yeah, because you've done it every day for the last how many years, So it becomes automatic. Similar, if the bodhisattva can let go of the practices that involve the application of effort, then from the 7th ground he enters the 8th ground. If he can, she can put those practices on automatic pilot. What are we talking about? Skillfully teaching living beings how to cultivate, how to get past their greed, their anger, their delusions. If he can do that, she can do that just right without reaching in there to get a little bit back, without fearing failure, without fearing bad reputation, without fearing taking a loss. All those things that ordinary folks check first. Is there profit for me in this? That's a defiled practice, right? I want to get something out of this. Big self. Bodhisattva's gone past that. Because why? The covers over his nature that we were describing earlier are very thin now. And he or she sees that those beings he is teaching are exactly his own awakening. No different. They are him. He is them. You are I. We are us. Okay? So, no difference. He just does it without the thought of what's in it for me. He enters the 8th ground. Passes through the crossroads. Traveling on the purified bodhisattva vehicle, he moves through the world, knowing its troubles and afflictions for sure, but doesn't grab them. Lets them all go. Doesn't pick them up. Doesn't want them. Then he is one who has transcended afflicted practice. All afflictions have been transcended. That's irreversibility, but he hasn't said that yet. Okay. Now, with that long four-legged analogy in there, you have to see moving parts compared to moving parts to understand this one idea, which is, what is Wu Gong Yong Hang? What's it like to get to this place where practice is effortless? Very interesting. Coming up, we have more pictures, more analogies. What's it like? This is, I've heard teachers say that, actually Master Chengguan, our Bodhisattva guide, the 4th Avatamsaka Patriarch, says, On the Bodhisattva path, there are two most important moments. Every step is important, but there are two that stand out. One is that initial moment when we say, I can become a Buddha. My goal is wisdom. That's what I'm here to do. That's the Chu Fa Xin, the Fa Puti Xin, the Bodhi resolve. That's the number one. That's the most important. After that moment, everything is different because your priorities realign at that point. The Bodhi resolve is that thought of, I can become a Buddha. That's what my potential. I know that I have this share. I recognize it. It's my share of what all Buddhas have and what everybody has. And the way I realize that is by focusing on waking others up. Because why? They are me. Waking others means taking all the coverings off my nature. Why is that such a turning point? Because your focus switches. Your focus is here now. The living beings you're crossing over inside, your own afflictions. Before that, it's like, well, I'm, crossing over, living beings, but I want to get that enlightenment. So that's not the Bodhi resolve. You say, my wisdom is inside waiting for me and those living beings. I'm going to polish my glasses until they shine. Living beings are crossed over. That's number one. Number two, most important moment, is irreversibility. No further retreat, where consciousness actually transforms. And you go, remember we used to do this octave thing with the guitar strings. The octave note is all there. It's latent in there, but you have to bisect the string and touch it, and you go from ba to ba. It's all there, but you have to bring it out, right? So that's the irreversibility. And the Bodhisattva is approaching it. We're almost there. It's this turning point. And what's interesting is the sutra describes it as there being some tension. It's not for sure that the Bodhisattva is going to do it. A lot don't. Because it's the mental transformations, what you have to see, what you have to endure, can drive you crazy. And it describes, I'm giving you a preview, in the next couple turns of the Dharma wheel, the Buddhas show up and say, good man, don't forget your vows. Living beings are still suffering. Keep going. Don't stop now. Everything you thought you knew is going nuts now. Up is not up, down is not down anymore. Don't freak. It's going to be okay. Operate on your heart at this point. Go by your vows, not by your knowledge, because your knowledge isn't going to serve you at the crossroads. It's that hard. It's that difficult. It's very cool how this is, personal. It's relationships. Again, the Buddhas come back and say, you got to plug into your heart. That's what's going to carry you across. And once you do, eureka, you're there. You've realized you're not a Buddha yet, but you will. It's like if you've. I remember when I was going to summer school in Vermont. Middlebury College is on Highway 7, which connects New York City and Montreal. Sherbrooke, New York City and Sherbrooke. Then you go west to Montreal. It's a perfect place to take off for a lot of mountain climbing in the White Mountains of New Hampshire and the Green Mountains of Vermont. And we used to go out with our buddies and do a lot of mountain climbing. And those are, serious mountains, 6,000 feet plus. Mount Washington is the tallest. I guess Mount Katahdin is the taller, but Mount Washington is the tallest in New Hampshire. And it's 7,200, I believe. Anyway, so you get to the trailhead and you leave your car behind. Now these are not, piton and rock and rope mountains, but they're major hike to get up and back. So from the trailhead where you leave your car, you go, whoa, look, that's way up there. We're going to be up there, at 4 p.m. And yeah, so start walking. And you launch in, and in the process of walking that trail, you go down into valleys, you curve around, the mountain itself blocks vision of the peak. You can't see the peak, but the trail is obviously there marked. You keep on going. There's little trail markers, little cairns, and keep on going and twist around. And you notice the vegetation is changing by about 1 p.m. And you keep on going, and you realize you're down to bushes now, where there used to be tall, tall trees. And you come around a corner, and there is the peak. Still an hour away, but you can see it. And you haven't been able to see it for the last, 3 hours. And there it is. You still have to get there, but there's the peak. It was invisible for most of the climb. And at that point, you just keep on walking. And now when you get there, you're above the tree line. It's just rocks and low gorse and stuff. And then you get to the top, and here's the geodesic survey marker that says elevation, U.S. Geodesic Survey. And congratulations. And sometimes there's a book there with comments, people who've been there, where they've come from, Bangkok, Sydney, and they're all saying, good day, mate, nice view. That's mountain climbing, Cool. So, that's what this is like. From ground 1 to ground 7, you can't see the peak. But here, it's like, oh yeah, that's where I'm going. It's not there yet. Got to keep going. A lot of people don't. Okay. Hey. Let us transfer the merit here. Yes. How long was he out? Okay. Was that anesthesia, or was it he wasn't in a coma? He was okay. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. Okay. How old is he? Is he 17? 12 or 13. And what's his last name? Sung? There's a young boy from our boys' school who, ALAN, Sung, who had a serious accident and had to be rushed down to hospital in San Francisco for brain surgery. And apparently is doing okay, but could definitely benefit from added merit and virtue. If anybody would like to transfer the merit, I'm going to share that as well with the United States of America. This time next week we'll have a new president-elect. And that's a matter of some moment. That's a significant moment for the U.S. But sadly, the election is not the end of it. The election is a kind of a test of all that's ahead, and We, America has a lot of fear, a lot of fear. And the fear drives us to say, oh, that can't be, that may not be, that there's no compromise, which is where we get polarized and divided and kind of forget the image of the country that, America the beautiful. So we haven't forgotten it, but it's covered over. We've got lots of thumbprints on our glasses lenses, so trying to see our way ahead as a nation. So that's where I'm going to transfer as well to Alan Sung. So please join me. As one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, our minds away to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light break the darkness of their endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Okay. May it be so. Thinking of where we are nationally, one of the best places to go is to the poets and the songwriters to find the missing soul, to find the sound that can bring us together, where people go, yeah, that's sings for me. That's one of the places that Bob Dylan was so powerful. But there are other voices that I think are important at times like this. And one of them is Paul Simon, who has given us two amazing songs about America. One is called America, and it was on Live Ryman and Bookends album, Simon and Garfunkel. And it's imagery that monks wouldn't use, because it's a kind of a love song. But for the sake of, I'll step aside and expediently put it out there, because I've got the lyrics here. So he goes, "Let us be lovers, we'll marry our fortunes together. I got some real estate here in my bag, so we bought a pack of cigarettes and Mrs. Wagner's pies and walked off to look for America." Right? People remember this one? So we bought a pack of cigarettes and Mrs. Wagner's pies, walked off to look for America. It's a very melancholy, bittersweet song. So think about a bus. His imagery comes right from my childhood and the Midwest as well. Kathy, I said as we boarded a Greyhound to Pittsburgh, Michigan seems like a dream to me now. It took me 4 days to hitchhike from Saginaw. I've come to look for America. Now Saginaw is 4 hours from Toledo, where I grew up. So this is laughing on the bus, playing games with the faces. She said the man in the gabardine suit is a spy. I said, be careful, his bow tie is really a camera. Right. Poet. Toss me a cigarette. I think there's one in my raincoat. We smoked the last one an hour ago. So I looked at the scenery. She read her magazine, and the moon rose over an open field. And then the emotional climax of the song. Kathy, I'm lost, I said, though I knew she was sleeping. I'm empty and aching, and I don't know why. Counting the cars on the New Jersey Turnpike, they've all come to look for America. So that's a Paul Simon song called America. And it's a poem. It's poetic lyrics. And it leaves us with all the questions just asked. Who has come to look for America? Well, all of us, our parents, our grandparents. Oh, beautiful, for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains' majesties above the fruited plain. America, America, God Buddha shed his grace on thee, and crowned thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. So, what imagery there. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain. See those? For purple mountains' majesties above the fruited plain. America, America. Some divinity will go unnamed, shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Where's the brotherhood gone? Where's the sisterhood gone? Mostly the men. Where's the brotherhood gone? That's what's missing right now, is the sense that we're sharing something. That has gone away. It's not a shared enterprise. It's win or lose. And that's different from my memories. I was alive when Eisenhower was president. How old is that? And Adlai Stevenson, I believe, was his opponent, if I'm not mistaken. Stevenson was this dignified statesman. My goodness, look into the life of Adlai Stevenson. And you find this refined, cultured gentleman who had a big vision, you know. And who was Dwight D. Eisenhower? He was the general who landed at Normandy on D-Day and took us across Western Europe to defeat tyranny in the form of the Third Reich and Hitler. Came back and we elected him president. Generals are trustworthy, right? Ulysses S. Grant, Dwight D. Eisenhower. And Eisenhower had been, I believe, Chancellor of Columbia University, or President of Columbia University. And people liked him because it didn't take the same kind of PR machines that we need now. What was Eisenhower, what people loved about him? When he was president or chancellor of Columbia University, somebody came to him and said, Mr. President, he said, the students refuse to walk on the sidewalks. They're cutting across the grass and ruining our lawns. Chancellor Eisenhower said, well, put the sidewalk where the students walk. They know what's best. They know how to get to class. Build a sidewalk where they walk. Don't force them to walk where you want them to walk. He goes, wow, what a great president. What a great solution, right? Simpler times. That was enough. We elected him president. He was a humanist, right? He wasn't a bureaucrat. He was a general. He defeated the enemy, right? So Eisenhower was the president who in his last speech said, I fear the coming of a vast military-industrial complex. Right? He coined that phrase, or his speechwriters did. Which is what? Where the Pentagon sucked down our money. He was the first one to warn us. I think it might have been 1959 or something like that. And sure enough, we are a country that spends most of our money on military hardware. And we maintain military bases in, is it 100 countries around the globe? Something like that? Something insane. And the tax dollars that we pay go to stockpile things that are there to destroy humanity and every living thing. That's what we pay for. We do. Okay. President Eisenhower said, here it comes. We're doing it now. And we went, we are, aren't we? So there's where brotherhood becomes nationalism, becomes military, where we become, the words we use, hawkish. We become Ashura-like. We become the most lethal living species ever to draw air on the planet. From that point of view, America's pretty scary in the world. Our military budget is more than the next, 30 nations' budgets added together. We still spend more on weapons, and we don't pay for things like highway improvements, hospitals. Berkeley is about to lose its only hospital, to be sold to private developers. All debates. It's at risk of going away. We may have to drive into Oakland later for emergencies instead of going to our own. Why? No money. Money is in other places. So, just to say, that's where things, we could point to that time. And crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. There's no brotherhood when you threaten to blow people up if they don't cooperate. Submit, not cooperate. Submit. Anyway, that's another story. People get nervous when monks talk about government policy, but it transcends government policy and it becomes a humanitarian issue. We have lots of other issues, such as things like 1 in 4 children now are afflicted with early onset diabetes. Is that it, Sam? Is it 1 in 4 now? Something like a quarter? And that's predicted by 2020, half. of the kids in America are going to have early onset diabetes. And why? Diet. Diet. And most of the gas that is greenhouse gases comes out of the tailpipe of animals that are then slaughtered for food, because we like that little burst of flavor on our tongue, never mind what it does after we swallow it down. We are, if we want to do one thing to change our budget, so not so much money after defense goes to healthcare, encourage people to get their protein sources from something other than living flesh. If we wanted to do the single most important thing to totally change human-inflicted climate change, stop killing large-bodied animals for food. Right? Those are the ones that produce the ozone-depleting gases. Who says? United Nations, World Health Organization, on and on and on and on. It's true. We don't do it. We won't. Nobody talks about that. Forget that. Never mind that changing our diets to save the world. No, we don't want to do that. Big Macs. When I was growing up, Big Macs went through this thing, 1 million sold, right? And then 2 million sold. We used to count them. We'd look and we'd say, wow, 10 million. Oh, how far can they go? They don't do that anymore. Billions and billions and billions sold. It's the number one in China and Japan and Korea. Not in India. McDonald's didn't make it in India. Thank goodness. So they couldn't produce enough veggie burgers. And then they had veggie burgers, and then they discovered that there was beef tallow in the veggie burgers, and India exploded. Vegetarians, like have been eating beef. Not okay. So there we go. We're funny. People are funny. Here's a solution. It's so simple. Won't do it. Brotherhood. Oh, beautiful for patriot dream that sees beyond the years. Thine alabaster cities gleam undimmed by human tears. Alabaster cities. America, America, God shed his grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Alabaster cities. Sounds pretty white to me. They say that the latest headlines, the latest is the number one, the savior of the current, I can't talk politics from this seat, but they say the savior of the current situation will be the Latino vote. The Latino vote is waking up, they say. There have been a tireless bunch of folks going out to get young Hispanic folks registered and out there and energized. And if that has been successful, there's still hope, because that particular voting block is pretty much determined one direction. So, yeah, crown thy good with brotherhood. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. And then there are people who say, nobody wants an uppity, nasty woman president. Men don't want that. Even deeper than our liberal tendencies is this, Well, look at Germany. Germany's doing okay. Look at Ireland. Ireland's doing okay. Look at England. They got a queen. England's doing okay. We'll be all right. All right. Where else? Where other women? England had a female prime minister. Where else? Taiwan's not doing okay. Taiwan is very hard on their presidents. They elect them and then they boot them out. Taiwan is a tough place to be president these days. The testing period is shrinking. Poor Tsai Ing-wen has not had, any honeymoon period at all before she's been just, yeah. That's another kind of punishment to be president of Taiwan. So. anyhow, yeah, and don't look at Korea. Korea's, ooh, ouch, ouch. So, while we're at it, since I mentioned it, let's do the other one. And I can't do it without, there's Paul Simon, bless his heart. I bet you Paul Simon is thinking, Nobel Prize. He might be. So, I think Paul Simon is a genius. Oh, by the way, while I remember, because I'll forget it, daylight savings time ends. Is it 5 a.m.? When is it? 2 a.m.? You get an extra hour. Hubba hubba. We get an extra hour tomorrow. Set your clock back. If you got a Mac, if you have one of these gadgets, it does it automatically. You can go around your house and get all the clocks. Okay, Paul Simon, American Tune, his other American tune. This one is equally, this song is, you show the power of the poet because it's bittersweet. Many's the times I've been mistaken and many times confused. Yes, and I've often felt forsaken and certainly misused. But I'm all right, I'm just weary to my bones. Still you don't expect to be bright and bon vivant, so far away from home, so far away from home. Now is that from where America God has shed his grace on me? And I don't know a soul who's not been battered. I don't have a friend who feels at ease. I don't know a dream that's not been shattered or driven to its knees. But it's all right, it's all right. We lived so well so long. Still, when I think of the road we're traveling on, I wonder what went wrong. I can't help it, I wonder what went wrong. Okay, now it gets esoteric. And I dreamed I was dying. I dreamed that my soul rose unexpectedly, looking back down at me, smiled reassuringly. And I dreamed I was flying high up above. My eyes could clearly see the Statue of Liberty sailing away to sea. And I dreamed I was flying. And here comes this is that moment, like in the last song. We come on the ship they called the Mayflower. We come on the ship that sailed the moon. We come in the age's most uncertain hour to sing an American tune. But it's all right, it's all right. You can't be forever blessed. Still, tomorrow's going to be another working day. I'm trying to get some rest. That's all, I'm trying to get some rest. So, the power of a poet. How about that? It's like, is that it? Are the blessings gone? We come in the age's most uncertain hour. We don't know. So this anxiety, this election anxiety is everywhere. What if? Let's get those young Latinas out there. There's the power. That's educate those young women. The power they hold. Yo. Okay. All right. Tomorrow is our one-day Buddha recitation, regular one, starting at 7:30 in the morning. Please, if you don't know what that's about, come and find out. We walk and recite the Buddha's name slowly in a way that allows us to breathe and go all day long. So 5:30. Vegetarian lunch. Good fellowship with folks who love that practice and come regularly to do it. And likewise, tomorrow there's another event happening which I want to announce. Guqin classes are beginning. Guqin is the Chinese tabletop desktop lute, 7-stringed, zither type. David Wong is the teacher. Tomorrow is the first of 4 classes. This is, it's not a free event, but I think if you want to come check it out, certainly that will be, David is a very friendly soul, very skillful teacher. He will be bringing guqins for you to check out, to see what it's like. A 3,000-year-old instrument still in continuous play. Confucius played the guqin. It was a 5-string instrument then, 2 strings have been added. So that's in our dining room tomorrow, 1 o'clock. We'll have concurrent events happening. 1 to 2:30, and it's guqin culture pretty much tomorrow. And David is extremely knowledgeable about all aspects, from the traditions coming down, the various schools. He himself is a performer. We had the concert on the 30th here with 6 of our own members from the last class who came through to the point where now they can perform. So if anybody has ever had a thought of learning a Chinese instrument, investigating Chinese music, just learning about music itself through the medium of this fascinating instrument, please do come tomorrow, 1 o'clock. What else do we have? Announcements.
So we have a number of events coming up. Next week we have the Amitabha weekend, starting at 8 o'clock on Saturday, which I believe is November 12th and November 13th. And that will be starting at 8 o'clock. We'll be training the 8 precepts, followed by from 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock Amitabha recitation. And Sunday, the following day, will also be from 8 to 5 p.m. So people are...
Your voice is kind of vanishing there.
So people who are interested in joining, please come if you like. You can talk with Jing Forsher and Mr. Yap about Paiways and also signing up. Otherwise, is there something else? Nothing else? I think that's our main event.
Okay. Great. So, as they say, 识道之进，非道之退，在善而从，不善而改. If it's the Tao, advance with strength, with a smile on your face. Buddhists can smile. The Buddha's a happy dude. It's not all suffering all the time. But if it's not the Tao, retreat. Pick what's good in what you've heard and put it into practice. Pick out what's not so helpful and change it inside. See you next week. Bow in respect to the Venerable Master. Namo